let's talk about the scope. By a millimeter. 1 notch. There you have it. Bare Desire XL Pistol Crossbow and 3 bolts, right? That's why you clicked on this video. So this video is about one little flaw that this thing has, and it's the Picatinny rail right here. After so many shots, you will notice that this thing will start to wiggle. It'll pop out of place. A little strange. Even if you dry fire it a few times, you might notice that happening a lot sooner. But after a few hundred shots, you'll notice you're having some issues. So if you want to put on a heavy red dot sight, a medium size one, or just a standard small red dot sight, it might have only cost $100, but you want it to work properly. You don't want to have any issues with this thing. If you're like me, you love this thing, you want to shoot it lots. So I figured out a way how to reinforce this thing, and I shot it for about a year consistently, at least once a week. I probably shot it a few thousand times at least, and before that, it honestly wasn't that much before I started having problems. So what I did was I took off the Picatinny rail and I put some epoxy in there, and this video is going to show me showing you how to do the whole epoxy thing, and then you can put on whatever you want onto the Picatinny rail, and it should last you a few thousand shots, as it did me, before you have to redo it again. So this is me redoing it again. So here we go. Okay, so this epoxy here that I'm using is nothing special. It's just from something from the dollar store. I would recommend using something the same thing or something similar to it. Nothing too crazy. I wouldn't recommend something like JB Weld. The reason being is because you want to be able to remove this stuff after a bit. Because if you were to use JB Weld, and eventually that stuff is going to crack, right? And if you want to redo this job a year or two later, you might not be able to get that stuff off. It might end up ruining your whole thing, and then you got to buy a new one. So this is probably a good idea. Something similar to this, because this came off so easy. I just took it off with a razor blade without even cutting into the plastic. So it's going to be an easy job to put back on. I'll explain to you here. Okay, first, let's just take this Picatinny rail off. All it is just one little screw right there. All right, and there's also this other little hole right here, and what I did was I put epoxy all around this rectangle shape very carefully, and around where the screw goes I put a little bit of epoxy in the screw hole, and I also put epoxy down into this other hole right up to the top of this thing. And so that actually acted like a secondary screw when it hardened. So when I took this thing off, I had to drill out that epoxy in that hole. I only had a little bit of epoxy near where the screw was. So I'll just show you how I do this with the epoxy. Okay, so if you've never used epoxy before, this is basically what you need to do. You need to get something like a nail or two, something, I'm just using this little Play-Doh cover, something to mix it on. And then when you're done with the epoxy, you need some tin foil or something to cover both of those when you're done, so you can use it again later. You don't need much of this stuff, and when you mix it up, this stuff is going to reek. You're gonna want to wear safety glasses just in case you're to get some of this stuff in your eyes. That would be a really bad mistake. You don't even want to get the fumes in your eyes because it will burn your eyes. You don't want to get the fumes in your lungs. And make sure after you're done, ventilate the room, because the shit smells like burnt hair. It's pretty nasty. So I'll use one screw for the flat end, and then the other one I'll use to just move it around. So I'll move it around here, move it around the edge, all around the edge. Keep it away from this. You do not want to get it because that'll mess everything up. You want to keep it away from this. So just here, around there, pack it down in that hole, and just put a little bit in the screw hole. So that'll keep your screw nice and tight when it hardens with the screw. Don't worry about later down the road when you use your screwdriver or your electric drill. It will pop right out of there, no problem. That is probably more than enough. Just wipe that away. Take your tin foil, stick it on there like that. That will last a long time like that. All right, take your nail and just whip that together really good. You're supposed to whip it together for a minute, I believe. All right, so first, right off the bat, I'm gonna take a scoop of this stuff, and I'm gonna put it right down in that hole, like I said. Let it fall down in there, pack it down in there. Just like that. Take some more of this stuff. Put it all around the edge. Some down in the screw hole. Some on top of here. Alright, now take this piece. Alright, it's probably a good idea to move this thing back. Pack that down in there like that. Just wipe that away. Wipe this away. You seen how I packed some of that in that little hole there, and then I put a little bit in where the screw goes. I put it all around the area, and then when I put this down, I packed some more into that hole and a little bit on top where the screw goes, screwed it down, and then wiped away the excess there. And then as you see on the sides, just a little bit will come out the side there. I didn't lather it on there to the point where when I pressed it down, it just oozed at the sides. I just put on a nice thin layer, enough for it to stick and harden. After that hardens, which won't take long at all, you let that sit overnight. It's pretty solid. All right, everybody. So it's been 2 days since the epoxy has cured. It's nice and rock hard, and this scope is good and solid. It's not going anywhere. Now, this scope in particular is not that heavy. It's very light. It's made out of half plastic, half aluminum or titanium, whatever it is. It's from the Umrex Fusion 2. I saved that scope because it's a cheap scope. I'm not going to leave that on my air gun. And it's 4x32, which is perfect for a little thing like this. You wouldn't want any more zoom power than that. What's really important is you have to make sure that the notch, the scope mount, needs to be back 1 notch from the very tip of the Picatinny rail. If you don't do this, when you crank this back, like so, like this, those little rubber pieces will end up hitting your Picatinny rail, the scope mount rails, and that could potentially snap your Picatinny rail out of, you know, and mess it up, and then you're gonna have to redo your whole epoxy job all over again. Remember how I was saying you will get, there will be a little bit that you will see sticking out where the seam is, and that's perfectly fine. That's actually a really good way to press on it with your nail and see how hard it is, or check it with a knife and see how solid it is, see if it's brittle or whatever, see if you mix it good enough. I mean, that it's like rock hard. It's like glass, so I know it's solid. I know it's good. The side was a lot thinner, but a little bit came out there, but that's perfectly fine. And then right here on the top, you can see you can kind of see where I wiped it away, but that's perfectly fine. That hole is working as a secondary screw, so it's just not being held in with one screw, and also that screw is being held in with epoxy. So everything is nice and epoxied, ready for 1,000 shots or more. Alright, so there you have it. I've shown you not all, but quite a few pretty cool setups that you can have with this thing. I always leave the quiver on there. I mean, why wouldn't I? 13 arrows is necessary, I think so. I always leave a flashlight on there because it acts as my grip. Now, there's a few things that I didn't put in the clips. Let's talk about the scope. The scope is actually a cheap, light scope that I got with the Umrex Fusion 2. It's actually made half out of plastic and half out of titanium or aluminum, whatever it is, but it's very light. I wouldn't want to put a scope like this on that's all made out of metal, because it would, for one, you're risking the friggin' scope getting messed up, and two, too heavy is just gonna mess up your Picatinny rail way too quick. This thing is nice and light. I think it's lighter than the Hiram or whatever it's called. I think before I end this video, I'll do some shooting with maybe this scope on there. I don't know. I'll just do some shooting before I close the video out. And something I want to know from you guys is, let me know in the comments, what setup would you have, or which one is your favorite? Do you like having a big scope on here, a big crazy scope? Do you like having the laser with the scope? Do you like just having a red dot sight? Do you like having nothing at all? I mean, do you like this setup? Because I like how tactical it is. I like knowing that if someone breaks into my house, I can grab this thing right away. I know I can reload it really quick with my eyes closed, and they're not gonna, I don't think they'll be doing too well after the second shot. Even the first shot, I don't think they'll be doing too well. I'm not going for kill shots. I'm going for less lethal shots. Just get the fuck out of my house. That's all I'm saying. Hopefully it never comes to that, but if need be, I'm looking at you like deer meat, motherfucker. Just saying. Everybody else out there who knows what I'm talking about, you know what I'm saying. Anyways, let's do some shooting. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for liking. Thanks for subscribing. I think this is my favorite setup. And this flashlight, I'll show you how crazy this flashlight is. That's the brightest setting, which is insane. This is dim. Wow, I mean, and then there's the strobe. Holy crap. And it's rechargeable, so it's crazy, right? And as you can see, there's 3 dots. See that? There's 3 dots. So depending on my distance, I can figure out where I want to shoot. I'll show you right here. See where this comes back. So what I was talking about is you'll see this piece and it'll just hit the corner right here. It actually just misses it by 1 millimeter. But if you have it up here, you'll have issues with that hitting that, and it'll mess up your Picatinny rail, and you'll have to redo this whole epoxy scenario. So having this back 3 notches, this particular one, it's actually perfect. It doesn't hit it, and it works out just fine. Super accurate. I'll go for that one right there. I will show you just how accurate this can be. I know this is really close up, but it's just as accurate 30 feet away. They're in there. I recommend anybody getting one of these 3D quivers. They're amazing. I mean, they're snug, but they slide out easy here. See, they're nice and snug. My favorite part is the bottom because they just pop right out like that. But I recommend anyone get this. It's amazing. Alright everybody, thanks for watching. Have a good one. I'll see you in the next one.
Peace out, y'all. See you in the next video.